So this is the September 19th meeting of the Bristol Planning Commission. It is 7:02. And we'll call the meeting to order at 7:02. First item is to review the agenda for additions, removals, adjustments of any items. I have nothing. Does anybody else have anything?
Somebody come in
Okay.
or swim.
So I think at this point, we should also see if somebody's willing to take minutes, since we don't have a scribe.
I can do them.
You're gonna do it? Okay, so Chris will take the minutes. Thank you. And then on that, if you clear that item, the next item, the continuing work with regional planning, and Adam's here. We had a few definitions, I think, to finish up, a few issues or a few activities or, Anne's here as well.
There's jumping in.
And then we do have the markup copy of the Unified Development Regulations today.
Yeah.
Discussion.
You have parking lot items, and then I don't believe I have any more definitions that I need to do,
Okay.
given the changes that you made to date, so I don't think I need to do anything there. You've got a couple of items in your parking lot that we have not addressed. And then we've got basically all of the changes that we made to date to the regulations. So I can start with we can start with the parking lot items, or we can start with going over basically everything that we've done to date.
Let's do the parking lot items.
Okay.
So the first one is we have a request from the Wells, and we can't say who it is, because by the time we get done reading this. No, anyway, it's on the chair notes, the request to consider amending the zoning requirements for owners of a lodging facility to live on site. And their rationale is as proprietors of the Bristol Suites and owners of the Punchy block in which the suites are located. They have increased the number of available guest rooms from one. It's currently 7, and as such, the definition of a bed and breakfast in the unified zoning bylaws does not apply as a place of lodging located on owner occupied single family residential property that provides not more than 6 rooms for occupancy by transient guests. For compensation or service meals only to overnight guests and not to the general public. So they are, I just read what they believe they are, but what is that? Can you kind of refresh us as to how they're zoned, Chris?
Sure, they have a permit for a inn/guest facility for our regulations. They received that in 2017. And where the rub with them is when in-guest facility was created, one of the requirements is that it the dwelling unit occupied by either the owner or a resident manager. And they
live there now?
No,
No.
They have.
yeah,
but not currently for several years.
they have the apartment, but it's not occupied. So what they're hoping to do, is my understanding, is remove. Would like you to decide whether or not it needs to be owner occupied. That's the rub, is that correct, Kevin?
I believe so. If I can go back to what they had requested.
And I think it would work for bed and breakfast or inner guest facility, or possibly even hotel. Well, if you could change any one of those if you felt inclined to do so.
Lower the hotel threshold, is that what you mean?
Lower the hotel
Cause that's
threshold,
12 and above, so that would have to come down to,
6, I think.
are there
they have
meals
7.
served there?
No.
No,
Cause that would be the only other component besides owner occupancy in the definition of those things.
Right.
So, I don't have a definition, I'm not,
Which definition would you like that, what they would like it to be, or what it currently is?
I'm trying to pull it up. So, yeah, I guess.
Chris, are those the only three categories of lodging that we have? Just bed and breakfast, inn and guest facility, and hotel?
I believe so.
And they don't fit any one of those.
Not at the moment.
So, how are they operating? And I'm just wondering, I guess I just don't know how that works, if somebody's. Fit the rules, so to speak, and they're
What they
operating.
would like to do is convert theirs, currently they have 6 rooms, so they're staying in that threshold of an inn. They have an apartment in it that is not being utilized.
That is not correct. They rent that apartment.
Do they know?
Yes.
Just looking. Here's the verbiage is as he, let me share this out.
Is there a document here that he shared that we could look at too?
That's what I'm trying to
It
find.
was.
This one, isn't it?
We've asked that before.
I think he followed, it was a verbal request. And I can't remember, it was a year and a half ago, when we first started talking about doing things with the regulations, that he had made this request that we consider this. And he may have followed up with, an email, because I am, in the chair notes, there are quotation marks.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you have no written communication from him on this?
it looks like that went to me. So I shared that with Kevin. As chair, and said, basically, I've received this request from a citizen, and would you put it on the
Yeah,
agenda?
but he had requested it before that. I don't know, I didn't,
The date on that is October 3rd of 21, so there's a chance that's the original from
Okay.
2 years ago.
yeah, that sounds about right. Maybe he sent it to you.
And he's
after-
referring to an attachment? What is the attachment?
It's this scan right here. Marked up the. What he would like
His
to.
proposal was to,
Let me, I just need to share this with, so the folks online, so Bill and I can see this. Okay,
And why didn't we see this until now?
because, well, it's been in the parking lot, as something to address when appropriate, and now that we have gone through the regulations for bylaw modernization right here, and up to this point, there's a couple odds and ends in that we've kept in the parking lot that we need to deal with, whether we choose to act on it or not, but this is the time that I'm introducing it, as opposed to whenever.
Well, I did, for one, ask for any written materials on this and was pushed off on that, and I'd like to read this when I had a chance to absorb it, since the applicant or the advocate is not here for to make his case. Would have been helpful to have for homework, I think. Earlier, maybe 2 years ago.
So you're saying you're not ready to talk about this at this time?
I'm not really, I think the advocate ought to be here and make the case for it.
Okay, we can't talk about it? You're
No, I'm
saying?
all game to talk about it.
Okay,
I don't see us taking action on it.
okay.
I would note that historically, they started operating as an inn before they were permitted. In 2016, I believe, not before. Permit wasn't until 2017.
Correct.
Since the permit was issued, it was a conditional use permit. And initially, the town just let them start operating. And at that time, the town planned to not allow that use in the zone. So they operated for some time without a permit. And then only begrudgingly, at my request as a neighbor, I'll declare my interest on them, on their neighbor, live right behind them. I asked for a conditional use permit based on the zoning regs that were upcoming. And that's how the proposal was dealt with, as if those zoning regs were in effect at the time, but they weren't. And so we did have a conditional use hearing, and we dealt mostly with parking, but subsequently, I think they've converted a couple of rooms that were commercial use on the ground floor, a couple of spaces, into guest rooms. I'm not sure about that timing. I would like to know.
I don't mind going, but what were they permitted to be back in 2017?
The town just let them start operating without.
They're not a bed and breakfast or something like that?
No, they never
No
qualified as.
definition for what they're being?
I can't speak for why the town allowed it.
But that's, okay, I just wondered, that's in found a little strange. Okay, go.
And subsequently, I think, although I would have to double check on timing, and if the advocate for this were here, we could have that conversation, but I believe that subsequently to the permit, there was a change of use in some spaces, commercial space to residential space. And I think, Chris, when this last came up in the parking lot, I did ask if you could pull out any permits that are relevant to the building, and I wonder if you have those.
That's the packet of, that's the original.
Is there a change of use permit in here for those?
That is the
original,
the original in usage, and that's all I've got.
16.
And this was and then it proceeds through the hearing to change it to an inn. The parking was the big issue. The planning commission at the time, which was who heard this, I believe. Because we didn't have a DRB in 2017. And they moved to approve it with the parking conditions. It's the second to last page in that packet.
So it's an inn, so this is the correct definition of it right now.
So is that what it was approved as?
Yes, that's what they asked for, was for an inn.
Yeah,
But you can see on the screen the changes that they're requesting because they no longer live there.
Doesn't it kind of stink to make a change on somebody's request like this in some way, or is this normal?
so it does identify what someone may see as a hole in the definitions. Because there's not anything under the 12 units that's not owner occupied. And there's also stipulations about meals and such as well,
Yeah,
so.
but usually that's what you have to follow, whatever's in the regulations, or am I wrong about this? Isn't that normal?
Well, if something doesn't fit, we've talked about a number of changes because of things that may be ongoing or potential gaps in what used to be.
How many years,
So-
basically illegal.
So, so let's not get hung up on the fact they're non-compliant.
Okay.
So I think the thing is, if they're non-compliant, and there's this whole muddy back history. What do we want to do on a go forward basis? Do we want to entertain the request? Or do we just say, we're not changing it?
Or does somebody think that should be a fourth category or
There's an
whatever else, it's.
The current is in guest facility.
That is correct.
Without it being crossed out,
That is correct.
and they're suggesting to add a word allows with everything crossed out and deleted.
Yes, correct.
Basically removing the owner or resident manager occupation, occupying the same place.
Okay, fair enough. And And 12 lodging rooms was always the deal, except for whatever reason, with an inn facility, when this was originally written, people felt there was a really strong benefit to having the owners of the facility live there. That's how I'm reading this.
Yeah.
And I don't know a lot of inns where that's the case. I think there are plenty of inns where that is the case, but not necessarily. You're renting, you're traveling anywhere, coast of Maine, you know, Pennsylvania, whatever, you're going in. They don't require the owner to be there. I don't know why they would have required the owner to be there. Other than that, well, they'll make sure it's kept up well. Well, if you're renting space, you better make sure it's kept up well, or it's not gonna be a viable operation, I would think, as an inn. I don't know. That's off the top of my head.
Mhm.
I don't think the request is outstanding, and I have clues as to how things developed. Originally, I have no idea what happened and why they were allowed, or they did live there for a while. I don't think it was too long, a couple of years maybe or something.
They didn't live there initially, and then they made an
Right.
apartment for themselves,
Right.
and then they did live there for a little while.
And then
I think a few years ago, they moved to Shore.
I don't know. I don't know. How do we feel about an inn that has 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 rooms standing on its own versus having to have the owner live there?
Well,
Especially if the owner is John and Jane and 3 kids, you know?
I mean, if the owner lives there, there's somebody looking out for what's happening there. That's the thing, right?
Absolutely. You have a manager, someone's at the desk.
Well, the manager-
You're there
somebody-
whenever you are there, just like at any other inn. What do they do at the Swift House? The Middlebury Inn. They got people to run it.
I don't believe anybody lives at the Middlebury, and I don't know what they do at the Swift House. And
In the way the owners live across the street.
Right, they always have.
And these guys, the ones that live in the co-housing, I understand that, right?
That's what the notes were, that yes, the managers.
One less permanent parking space you need to have there.
Pardon?
One less permanent parking space or 2 that you need to have there.
If you want to hear my personal experience as the neighbor of this facility, I'd be happy to share that.
That,
It's been an issue. Parking is a real issue. Their guests park in my residence and in my parking spaces all the time. And it was a real issue for several years. And I got no satisfaction from them on that. They were not particularly responsive to that. And I did need to drag them into what the town didn't do initially, which was to have a conditional use hearing on it, sort of after the fact. Because the parking had become so problematic. They also hung prohibited light fixtures all over the back of the building, double-headed floodlights. Made it possible for me to do, shadow puppets on my wall in my bedroom every night. And took years to get a response on that. And so there are impacts. And when more recently they started renting the owner's unit, if you want to call it that, where they lived originally, it has a roof deck. And on the back, and sometimes guests or whoever's staying there is up till 1 or 2 in the morning, and there's nobody resident to
We
rent that. And if I get out of bed and be the bad guy, I can let them know that it's an issue for all of us who live back there. But I'm not always feeling like I can get out
how
of
many
bed.
people live back in your area?
People live all over there.
I mean,
How many people or how many units there?
what you're building,
Yes, I have
and I don't know your building configuration since you've had it,
myself, and also the little house next to the mill is a residence.
okay?
There's an apartment over what used to be the Old Mary's at 11 Main. There's an apartment at the back of the Old
Oh,
Mary's at
sure,
11
there's
Main.
housing back there.
And there's 2 units above Walkies, although only one of them is on the back. And
What was it like when it was rental?
everybody had their assigned parking space and never had a problem with parking back there.
Everyone had an assigned space.
Mhm.
Why can't they do that?
Well, because when they built it out, they made a couple of changes that eliminated one of their parking spaces. So that made a real pinch.
It's tight. I say because I was involved in actually reviewing that when there was a change made. I can also say that having stayed there as a guest briefly, I could speak to sort of the parking is an issue and the lights are an issue. However, and I think this is sort of an important distinction, and that doesn't mean I'm being unsympathetic to the actual, this specific situation. I think that whatever we have as language needs to address a variety of situations, right? A non-owner occupied inn that isn't surrounded by other apartments right downtown might be a little different if there was an issue with lights or noise or parking than one that is right downtown and does impact other people. So I think the definition needs to be a good definition across the board. And I guess I would lean towards making sure that the most complicated situation is acknowledged and covered, while allowing some flexibility for, well, it's not reasonable to have this person living here all the time, et cetera. So finding some kind of compromise. I would imagine that that is probably why this was drafted this way in the first place. That's just my 2 cents.
So what you're talking about is, I don't know what the section of the rules are where you have the district and you list what's permitted.
Yeah,
But then-
yeah,
Then there are conditions about lighting or noise or stuff like that, right? And that's what
Yeah.
you're referring to make those
Yeah.
such
yeah,
that the operation can be done in a good way for the neighbors.
yeah. I mean, I don't think that it's necessarily contingent upon having owner occupied or residential manager
Right,
on site, but having someone there and available to respond in a timely manner to a concern and to witness that and to engage with neighbors who might have concerns and to be involved. It's different if you live there and you live it yourself, as opposed to, oh, well, we're so sorry, we sent someone over, we were out of town, you know, our daughter came and checked and it didn't seem to be a problem to us, right? As opposed to, well, I was there, and so I don't, you know, I don't want it to turn into arguments, but I think that wherever inn and guest facility is allowed, it needs to be something that considers all of the districts in which we can have an inn and guest facility, and what are the other sort of parameters around that.
So how would you address that, Ann? Would you do it specifically for that definition, or would you do it through the performance specs in whatever section that is?
That's a good question. I guess I'm more inclined to have a definition that works well across the board. And I think that's perhaps also just for the sake of simplicity. I'm thinking about someone who wants to create an inn or guest facility, right? Has one currently. And that's just sort of from the user end, is helping people to understand, you know, what can you do? How do you do it? Right? What does Bristol encourage? What does Bristol perhaps not want, right? In certain areas. Either that or being really specific about things like noise and lights and stuff, and that gets more complicated.
This is in your village business district. In your current regs, it's permitted as site plan, but it sounded like they went through a conditional use review in 17.
No, that's what I'm reading right now. It looks like per the notice of decision. It says Bristol Suites is located in the village business zone, which includes a guest facility and allowed use with site plan required. PC applied section 390. Site plan review, section 230, page 16 of the town Bristol zoning regs, section 391, general conditions. Yeah, this was a site plan, this appears to have been a site plan review.
So it was a site plan review, but under your site plan review, they can review parking. Specifically is allowed, and they can review lighting
And noise,
and noise
screening.
are all basically criteria. But it sounds like you didn't get a satisfactory result out of that site plan
It
review.
was pretty unsatisfactory because it was after the fact. I mean, they were operating for months and months and months already. And when I noted that the current regs at the time, which are not the current
So
regs now.
John, I'm sorry if I may, not to discount your experience or anything, but I think the topic at hand tonight is strictly the definitions. And whether we're gonna address those or not, and I understand there may be other issues related to this outside, but I don't think tonight's the time to go through all of that. I think we need to focus on the definition and changes we may or may not make to that.
Well, I'm not really comfortable. I mean, this to me feels a little bit like spot zoning, like going backwards and making something fit that hasn't fit. And I think that's a bad practice for a board generally. And I have a definition of spot zoning here, which is roughly helpful. It's interesting if you want to see it, but
I'm all set, thank you.
cool. And I mean, it's relevant that, I mean, I think I just don't kind of understand why we have to change rules to make that comport as opposed to.
We don't have to. That's what we're talking about is should we? Is there a hole? Is there something that's lacking in the definitions? Is it possible that we should have some sort of a lodging facility that is different than the three that we already have as definitions as an allowed use? Or is this all we want for lodging facilities within the town strictly by these?
I just wouldn't want to give this particular property the golden ticket of now you're okay after years of not being okay. I don't think that's proper zoning.
I think you have a conflict of interest talking about this right
It's
now.
difficult.
And so
But
if maybe we need to
So,
try to
yeah.
put that aside.
I hear what you're saying, John, that we don't want to react, but then again, this definition may or may not be reasonable either, so we need to step back and look at.
What the
Well, there's
planning
reason.
commission wants to decide is what's in the best interest of the town of Bristol, right?
Is it reasonable to have somebody at a facility require somebody that owns it be at that facility?
Or a live-in manager,
I don't think it says live in there.
it does.
resident manager.
Or a resident.
It has been reasonable for years to require that.
So
Can I agree that we should step away from this particular example? Because I'm always a fan of having the conversation that is, what do our regulations say for any instance of this? Anywhere that it is either permitted or with a site plan or conditional use, right? So that if I wanted to open up an inn in my home, you know, what would feel good there on Pleasant Street? Or if someone wanted to do this, you know, out on Plank or wherever we're going to allow it, you know, what's going to work well for the village and the neighbors. And I think making that distinction and saying this is not about this particular inn, right, or guest facility. This is about what feels good for Bristol.
Okay, Bill, you've been kind of quiet. Have you got any thoughts? You're still muted.
There we go. Well, I do remember at the time we drafted these definitions originally, that it did seem important to have the owner be a resident. I don't remember just where they were, but there were a couple of examples of multiple unit buildings that weren't doing so well. What I'd like to ask is, what are our other options besides 12 units? What's the, can you refresh my memory? I think someone said there's 3 options now, and where is the breaking line, the threshold on those?
Bed and breakfast is 6. And that's the third one. So there's hotel, which is more than 12 units. And then bed and breakfast is not more than 6 units and owner occupied. And then the inn and guest facility is up to 12 units and owner occupied or resident manager.
Okay. Yeah, that was something in the nature of a compromise, split in the difference, at least at the time. What additional, what's the difference in what's allowed and what's the restrictions on the unit, other than the number of guests and whether the owner resides?
Meals, hotels cannot serve meals. Inn and guest facility can serve meals to guests and the public, and bed and breakfast can only serve meals to guests.
Okay. Now, someone was reflecting on a new category. Whoever said that, do you have something in particular in mind?
I did not have anything in particular in mind, but it seemed with the categories, it seemed like there may be something that was a non-owner occupied, no meals up to 12 or something. I don't know. It's just, there's lots of options.
Are there other rooms for rent in Bristol? Hotels or guest rooms or
Bed and breakfast.
bed and breakfasts?
They just sold the one down on Hewitt Road. I don't know if that's gonna continue as a bed and breakfast. Airbnb is really the only other major option we have.
Yeah, we used to have the Lawrence House, but that's been a private residence for some time now.
Does Tillerman still do rooms or? no?
Yes,
Oh, yes.
3 or 4.
Who was that last one? Kevin?
Tillerman,
The old Marys.
Oh,
Or
Yeah.
I guess the new Marys.
Yeah,
the new.
they have rooms. They're very nice.
gotcha. Well, and in this particular category, can serve meals to the public. Did I get that right?
Yes. Inn and guest facility with up to 12 rooms can serve guests, meals to the public.
So basically what this proposed change is saying is that it would actually reduce the distinction between a guest house and a hotel largely.
Yes.
Am I on the right track?
Yeah, the only distinction would be the number of rooms and the meals allowed to be served.
But a hotel can't serve meals?
No,
Oh, that's kind of strange.
Yeah. They had to be a mixed use. They had to be approved. Separate approval for the restaurant.
Oh, okay.
Although interestingly, the definition does say a hotel shall not include a restaurant open to the public unless approved as a mixed use, right? So they can provide meals, but not to the public.
Well, I'd be leaning towards not requiring the owner to occupy the building. I do think it's important to a point. Are we saying that up to 6 or six and less requires owner occupied at this time?
Yes,
Setting
Yes.
aside this particular third category.
So it'd be 6 or less as a bed and breakfast would require owner occupied. In or guest facility, 12 or less would require a resident manager or owner occupied. And the hotel has no requirement.
Mhm. Well, I'd be leaning towards removing the owner occupied requirement, but not not strongly. I could be persuaded to keep it, but I think times are changing, and this might be one change that would be reasonable. I still am, and the whole idea was that the owner had a more direct interest in seeing that the place was maintained and neighborly and observes all of the common courtesies that you would expect. We may have enough new and additional regulations that it's not necessary to rely on that impulse of an owner occupied residence. But that's how I'm leaning. That's not firm yet, but that's how I'm leaning.
Fred,
I have a suggestion. In thinking about this, I'm along with Bill leaning towards not requiring residency. Even from a business standpoint, you're losing 8 to 9% of your potential income if you've got to have the resident living in something that's being run as a business. But in order to, I think what's reasonable, especially with 12 rooms, that what was the other word they used? The owner or a resident manager, that maybe we can say something to the effect that a manager of the entity must be available 24/7 and live within a certain distance so that they could respond at 12:30 at night if John or someone calls because there's a ruckus going on. So that there is, I mean, you go to the Marriott, there's always someone there. That's maybe not the best example. But when you got 12 rooms, all kinds of things can happen. And having someone available close at hand, even though they're not a resident, may be a reasonable request to allow the operation to continue, but in a way where we know that there's some protection. And then the other things like the lighting and parking and whatever, I think should be addressed in another section, whatever you call that sections. John, I think it's reasonable that it's brought up if things were fudged over before, where that's brought up currently to hopefully have things work out better.
Wouldn't it be nice to have a full hearing?
Yeah, I should,
so, go ahead.
I'm sorry, the two things like you pointed out, as far as the resident manager, I'm actually leaning toward there should be a resident manager. You have 12 rooms, you got 30 people in there or whatever, things can happen and they don't live here, they don't know maybe how to call the right number to get help or whatever. And they all, of course, there's also, they get loud, but if something gets hurt, I think a resident manager or somebody's very close, and I think that.
Well, in this day and age, if someone's renting and they say someone will be here up until whatever it is, 9 o'clock at night. But if you need something, if there's an issue, this is the text. this is the phone number.
That guy could be at a party, you know, 20 miles away or what.
He or she may, well, they're gonna have to make provisions so that that's not the case.
Yeah, well, something like that, but then the second part, so I'm leaning like there should be somebody responsible, very nearby at the very least, but. As far as like John's case and just the way that building's been operating, you know, they seem to be like non-compliant completely for all their time, and why don't they just come in here and have like a conditional use? Who knows what changes have been in there? John said they've made some rooms change from retail to something.
From commercial to
Yeah,
residential.
so, well, I think the owner should be here to answer some questions, and we can have a hearing.
Which is a separate topic. from
Yeah,
what we're
that's correct.
talking about
Yes,
right
I agree with that. That is a separate topic, but I think it's an important one.
Yeah.
Is that the current, you know, non-conforming use that hasn't been addressed by the appropriate hearing and permissions, not so cool, right? You know, I would say if, go ahead.
This is an important thing in town. We've had family come for funerals, weddings, whatever, and it's one of the few places where there's multiple opportunities. Everyone has said very nice things about the place when they stayed there. Small, you know, instances, but nevertheless, matter of fact, it's been over a year since anyone's been there. I'd hate to lose that, the end, because we make things a little difficult. And as a business person, if you're gonna automatically lose 8 or 9% of your income, that's not a positive thing. And if you require a residence, that would be so. If you require a clerk downstairs, well, you wouldn't be losing it. And that would be as far as I'd want to go.
I think that having someone available or responsible on duty is different than having a resident manager requiring that living
Somebody
capacity.
could have a cot in the back of the room, and he stays there all night, would that be, you know?
Or he
just-
stays at the desk up front.
Yeah, but he
I
can
don't
go to
know.
sleep if nothing's happening, you know?
Yeah, most of the time, nothing will.
Well, most of the time,
Yeah.
but
I-
I
They'll
hear
pay
the
that
neighbor here
person a lot
saying,
less.
When it does.
They'll
Right.
pay that person a lot less than they will for losing a
Absolutely,
room at
absolutely,
$300
that's
or
good.
whatever
We
it
have
is.
a person here who knows from personal experience that things happen. So what the heck?
So-
That seems small. But
I guess the other thing
Something like
is, we may want to consider or discuss briefly is the delineation of certain zones, it's a site permit, and other zones, it's a conditional use.
yeah,
Is, I don't know if we've got the right overview for the various zones.
So I think that we'd have to go zone by zone. But I think that the village business is probably the least restrictive in that. For what everything else that's going on compared to once you get into the more residential areas.
And arguably, it should be the most restrictive, since it's the densest part of Bristol where the most people live the closest together, where the impact will be most readily felt. So I would propose that all of these uses be conditional uses. I think people would.
Every single one? Or just.
In the
lots
village
of-
just in village business.
Every single use? is
Well,
conditional?
no,
I'm trying to understand.
of the three.
I'm trying to finish my
That's right.
sentence, to make it clear. The hotel, the inn guest and B and B, maybe not the B and B. Maybe not if the resident, maybe if the managers aren't resident or the owners aren't resident, but you know. There ought to be a high bar in the village business zone and maybe the next zone out, which are the most densely populated places and would have the most impact felt. Put a hotel out on the edge of town in the middle of a 10-acre field, there's very little impact compared to putting the same thing, say downtown, where we all live. And
Or opposite, because you're completely changing the character of that area instead of keeping it as a fully built out downtown area.
that's one area to assess, but so is traffic, noise, light, parking, screening. So
Can I throw out a suggestion?
Go ahead.
So conditional use anywhere in the village for an inn/guest house, if your plan is to have no residential manager or owner occupied, otherwise site permit. So if you're planning to have your owner on site, you're given more flexibility, less of an owner's process. If you're not going to owner occupy or pay someone to be there 24/7 on site to be responsible for the facility, you're going to have to give us more assurances. And that would be a place where you could say, okay, there needs to be someone staffing this who is available within a certain radius, and that number needs to be available to guests and publicly posted so neighbors can contact them should there be a concern. I don't
So
know,
would that-
but I kind of feel, yeah, it's sort of.
Would that
it's-
be a
it's trying to
type
be
of
ready.
breakout of guest house as owner occupied and inn as non-owner occupied, so that there's clearly two separate definitions, so it's easier to apply as conditional or not conditional?
I hadn't thought about that. It's not a crazy idea.
From my end,
It's-
that would be much easier, because it's black and white,
Mhm.
not,
Yeah, and
Same name, different thing.
it would be same usage, but very different standards, but both are very defined.
so. This is warned as a discussion issue, so we can kind of get the sense of where the wind's blowing on this. But I think there's a few different aspects of this, and Anna, to put you on the spot, you had said something about looking at definitions. Would you be willing to take and develop what would be, I think, what we're talking about is maybe 4 different aspects and lay out what seems to be reasonable for a definition and what would be the oversight as far as permitting?
So we're talking about bed and breakfast, guest house, inn, and hotel.
Yeah,
Yes, although we're not necessarily looking to make changes to hotel or bed and breakfast per se.
I have not
Because
heard.
bed and
anything-
breakfast, I think was already owner occupied as required, right? Hotel does not require that. I'm just asking, I'm happy to take it on, but I just want to be clear, like, are we,
Correct, I
Keeping-
think Kevin's statement was just moving from 3 definitions to 4 definitions. But I think it's
Yeah.
just those.
so
that
just
in-
those 2?
Yeah, I mean, that's where that's where the meat of the action is, but it's those 4 categories to make sure they still mesh too. So what we've talked about today, or talked about so far is each one from a bed and breakfast to a hotel. The requirements change as the size gets larger and looser, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, so the meat of the issue is separating in and guest, but it's still bounded by bed and breakfast, and I don't wanna make it too muddy, but if you understand what I'm saying, we don't wanna get those 2 out of sync with the other 2.
If you wanna pursue that, I'd be happy to either work with Anna or do something for you. Based on your discussions tonight and break out in and guest house.
What's your pleasure on it? Would you like to have Adam take a cut at it and then, or you wanna work with him?
Whatever is going to be most efficient, Adam. What's your preference?
We're paying Adam the big bucks.
I'll do it first and I'll run it by you before I run it by the board.
Perfect. Happy to do whatever I can.
Thank you both.
You got it. Yeah.
In a hotel really, the number of people, I mean, why don't we just make them hotels or inns? And,
Well, the hotel doesn't require any on-site,
well, if we're going there.
Yeah.
but I don't
Okay, I don't know.
I didn't hear we were gonna do that. I thought we were modifying,
No.
loosening.
The size, the number of
Just
available
the
rooms.
size, yeah, but why
Basically.
couldn't I possibly have a 6-room hotel? Very chic, of course.
Well, it'd be.
Of course, it's you.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, it just seems a little arbitrary, the difference between in and hotel, just size. Okay, anyway, I was just wondering.
And could we now see, since we've had the conversation, whatever written communication there's been on this?
It's been mostly with you, I mean, we get CC'd on
I
it,
sent you I sent it to you, you had it up on the board there.
that's these emails here, these few emails I've had. As you see, most of them come into Adam and we get CC'd on.
So that's a yes.
Making out, so. So I wanna be crystal clear what you want, so I make sure I get exactly what you want. I don't wanna miss anything.
Any communications you've had with the person asking about this change? Or that had anything we have that, like the thing dated 2021 that wasn't forthcoming when I asked back then to see whatever the request was or whatever there is in writing. Any communications you have in your file about this request? I don't know how to frame it. Is that fair?
Basically relating to the inner guest facility. The request for a change of,
Yeah, this particular communication that started this conversation.
It started with Tom sitting in a meeting.
So any written communication you have.
There we go. And should this be sent to the entire board, Mr. Chairman, or do you want it just sent to Don's request?
It should be sent to everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, so we killed that one yet? I think the next issue was a request to review the recent addition of business yard as a conditional use in the village mixed zoning district. So business yard definition. Yes, we can make it better.
if you wanna pull it up and.
I'm just trying to find where it was.
Page 98.
Page 98, not what we were sent, but of our current zoning.
Your current-
Yeah.
So it should be right around there somewhere. I don't know how much the track changes change your,
Okay.
It's in black and white.
Let me just share this. In the world can see it. Well. Yeah. Here.
Thank you.
Here you go.
I have to leave. My 2 cents is, that's an appropriate use in that zone, but I do have to go. Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Conditional use in village next. C1 and
RA5.
question is the appropriate in village next. We have a map that shows where. So it may be good to show where we are. is today, and where we are proposing a village mix to be,
It's not changing.
village mix
Village-
is not changing.
Village mix is staying the same.
It is?
Yes.
In terms of
Is that
the
the blue
boundaries.
one?
In
that-
turn
that's
of
the
its
other?
boundaries. No, the village mixed is the orange hatch.
But not in terms of its density.
Correct.
So it's getting much more dense.
It's getting more dense.
Right.
Orange hatch. I got two reddish ones. There's one further out that's more red than orange.
Right, it's lighter, it's the more
That one,
orange.
yeah.
That would be
Yeah,
Got
commercial.
it, got it.
right. So
That,
Most of mix is probably inside the village planning area.
all of that is inside
All
the
of it,
village
yeah.
planning area.
Right along West Street. Probably the Bristol Works thing.
Jackman's, it's the it starts from the north, it's Jackman's.
Across the street from Jackman's.
And the big field out that Doug Beam owns, it's,
Okay,
vacant
that's
right
what's
now.
back there.
yeah. And then it runs into the Jackman's complex into Bristol Works. To the west is the old landfill, the high school. To the south starts basically, along West Street, like the ROC buffer. Down to Hewitt,
Road.
down to Hewitt Road. And there's a little bit also out in, Rockydale.
Yeah, just that little tail out there.
Interesting.
I put this on the agenda if you care to hear why.
go ahead.
So this use was added in, the last go around of changes made to the regulations. And, I've seen, two examples of it be used for permit applications so far. There may be more. I just remember two. One is in the mix zone on Hewitt Road. And arguably is really incompatible with how we envision mix being used, not only now, but in the future, especially if it's more dense for housing and future growth of the village. The proposal that was made down there was to have a business yard that would host and be the headquarters for an excavation business and a garbage business in the mix zone inside the village planning area where trucks would warm up and cool down for hours on end each day, come and go, materials would be stockpiled. And of course, the garbage business would be based there. And a maintenance yard where there'd be, the sounds of fixing heavy equipment and storage of outdoor heavy equipment like excavators and backhoes and that sort of thing, as well as their navigation around the site. All of that to me goes diametrically against what we envision for the mixed zone as the future growth of the village, and now for residential and future growth of the village. And I think, I would like to propose that we remove business yard as a conditional use in the mixed zone at least, and possibly even in the RA5 zone until we get a grip on, do we want to suffer that conflict between our goals? And I think step all over the goal. One of the highest goals of the Bristol Town Plan is to maintain and expand our residential character. And putting heavy industry immediately in or adjacent to current.
It's total correction, it's not heavy industry.
Storing and maintaining.
It's a contract.
I guess I'm using that in the colloquial sense.
Well, it's misleading.
Well, it's an impact, it's an activity or use that has significant potential adverse impacts on neighbors, and certainly would discourage me if I were, say, considering developing housing next to a business yard like that from doing housing there. There are appropriate places in the village for that kind of activity. And in our mixed zone, in our, limited residential growth areas, it seems untoward and counterproductive. And just to add to it, in RA5, I would propose the same thing, because we have another proposal down there where a business yard is proposed in the middle of a residential area where They've already been operating for a couple of years and have had a big impact on the neighbors, according to the neighbors down there.
Okay, so,
So my proposal is this, that we remove business yard as a conditional use from the mixed zone and RA5 until we can look at it and work on it some more and see if it's compatible going forward.
okay, so thoughts?
I think that sounds like a no-brainer. We expanded the residential up Plank Road area. And we took out the potential use of the business yard there. If I got my memories right. Is that correct?
It wasn't allowed there before. That wouldn't have.
But we didn't, we wanted to put it now, well. We had some discussion about it up there and it seemed like unanimous maybe, even if people thought it was inappropriate. For the extension there, the more dense residential use.
Right, but the business yard is never permitted use out.
But
It's all our.
you say it's not heavy industry, but. I can say back in the day when I was heavy industry, it was way different talking about definitions than this that we've got now, and I think it has a lot to do with. Well, they didn't have the term adverse, I think, but undue adverse impact off-site. To me, that's heavy industry, it doesn't just have to be, pollutants or chemicals and such, I mean, big noise, et cetera. These are impacts that residential don't want, so I think I agree with John to keep it. I've thought this all along, not in a residential zone.
Anna,
So you know me, I'm the definitions girl, right? I think that if you look at the definition of a business yard, I think there was a lot of, well, maybe this may be a little loaded, but sort of wishful thinking, right? That like, yep, like we're gonna have, a contractor and he has a crew of carpenters and they're gonna keep their trailers and their work trucks and their nice shed on this property. Or we have a landscaping business and really they're coming and going with their mowers and their trimmers and they're going in their shed and hanging stuff up and cleaning out. But most of the day they're gone, they go do their jobs, they come back at night, they put their trucks away and they go home, right? Construction, landscaping, right? Building, landscaping. I think that the issue is when you get into like, what does construction related mean? And I think that, somebody wants to have a garbage business. That's not construction related or building or landscaping. Somebody, is doing excavating. Well, okay, now we're at a stretch, right? Are you excavating? I thought this was building, landscaping, right? Construction related, I guess I could see that. Is that there is, in my mind, a difference between those lower impact businesses where it is literally a place to store your trucks when you are not working and you're really not there and there isn't heavy traffic back and forth all day long. And the equipment that you're using isn't creating dust or noise, right? Or smells, right next to a very densely populated area if we're going to allow for the kind of residential development that we're hoping for. So I think either this is something that doesn't belong near where people are living, or the definition has to be reined in pretty significantly to be clear about what would be totally great and allow someone to run a small business, right? And hours of operation and noise and, other effects on neighbors, and what wouldn't. I think a particular concern is what is the size of the vehicle and how often are they going back and forth? What kind of hours are they keeping? Are they going back and forth all day? What are they doing to the road? What does it feel like to be there on a hot day and dust kicking up? If you're trying to be outside in your yard with your kids, because your house is next door to one of these business yards. So that's where my thinking is. I don't think it's absolutely a no-go, but I think that if we're going to have increased residential density and attract people to Bristol, encourage people to build housing here that we desperately need, a business yard next door isn't where I would want to live. It's not where I want my kids to live.
Fred,
I'm struggling. When I was an Act 250 commissioner, we approved the application on Hewitt Road, but it wasn't in this district, it was across the street. Right, to a local business to to have commercial vehicles there and store them and everything else. And there was some wetlands that we dealt with, but things went through fine, and of course, we understood that the town's zoning permitted it, even though it's not in the same district as what we have here. It's on the south side of Hewitt Road. And we've got
Was that in a different zone? Was that out in the
I guess
corner?
it must have been, I don't know what the zone is across the street on
Was it
Hewitt Road,
Tommy's?
the one that's south.
It was in commercial, because it was the only place that was allowed when, Smith McLean applied for that at the time.
Right, so
And then
that,
you've got the electrical place there and whatever. So we're saying that side of the street, it's permitted, but the other side of the street, it's not. I'm thinking out loud here a little bit, you know. You got the old Lathrop place, you've got a significant Green Mountain Power transfer type station.
it's a transformer.
Yeah, in there as well.
Substation.
But, and you have some residents more towards the river. But there's one or two on the outside. And I wonder how well that perks down there. I know most of the flats, the water table is pretty high. And you haven't seen much new construction down there at all, and I think one of the reasons is because of the water table being high. It's a floodplain too. I don't know whether Hewitt Street is.
I know I've looked at the maps on it would be what, the south side of Hewitt, between Hewitt and the river. And maybe a third of the way from the river towards Hewitt is like unbuildable floodplain.
Yeah. And Johnson's is
roughly.
not a floodplain. They operate, they have flooding from time to time, they cope when they were here when we were, that's another story. So I'm really kind of torn, I'm not dismissive of it automatically. But I think the conditions would be important, I don't think you'd want, like the garbage service and whatever, trucks in and out of that on a regular basis. 6 days a week, 8 hours a day type of a thing. I think that would not be desirable for the community on that road and the extra truck traffic it might bring, and that always damages roads a little bit more. But at the end of the day, whether it's 4 or 6, the people coming back from whatever they were doing and parking and then hopping in their motor vehicle and going home, I have less of an issue with that. And when I read the definition, they did include maintenance, which makes sense. If your truck breaks down, or you got to do the brakes or put tires on, you need a place to do it. But it is an active type of a scenario. When Masterson's operated up here on North Street, I don't recall him ever, in and out, dumping rubbish, et cetera, et cetera. It was pretty much just a place to go at the end of the day. And that's what I kind of envisioned the definition and how it speaks to me. There's always room for abuses. And there's always the monitoring of what goes on, which isn't always easy, right, Chris? But it's important. And so I'm tempted to leave it in. But I guess it might be good to have the wording such that there's a little stronger tilt, or it's implicit that this isn't an ongoing construction scenario with the type of an operation that would involve daily traffic, daily noise, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. That's the best I can come up with at the moment in my head.
Bill, do you have any thoughts?
Yes, I'd be of the view that most of the issues, most of the concerns could be addressed in a conditional use permit. I can see how there might be some excess from time to time under this definition, but in general, I would think nothing that couldn't be addressed in the conditional use.
Thank you. So I don't see the issue necessarily, although with a Hewitt one, when you brought up there was trash trucks, and I caught on to that, and that's not construction related, so that doesn't fall in the definition.
And it's just worth noting, just on that point, that in the conditional use process, the DRB said no garbage trucks there.
It actually said only his excavating business.
That's right.
was the only permitted.
Right,
So that, and living 3 blocks down from where Masterson operated out of for a number of years, and watching the trucks go by every morning and every night, and not seeing a whole lot of other activity there, even though there's a big Quonset hut for maintenance and whatnot. It's just a matter, I don't see it being as impactful. If your excavator's sitting in your yard, it's not making money for you, so that stuff's all over the place typically. So they're conditional uses. I don't know the acreage of the two examples we've brought up.
the first one on Hewitt Road, the parcel is like 9 acres, but the area of operation is somewhat less than that. I don't know, but the parcel is 9 acres approximately.
You got 9 acres.
The other one is 40 something acres
Yeah,
down.
so I would think
Notch.
on 9 acres even, certainly 40, you could come up with adequate siting that, would make it reasonable as far as, distancing, shade shielding, vegetation, all that kind of stuff from the adjacent property. So I think I need a more forceful issue, and I don't, digging is a construction activity too, so I don't even think that's a stretch. As it's been discussed.
Sorry.
I think I've said enough.
I think one of the rubs is that the definition is actually pretty elusive. It's so broad as to invite any application that wants to shove things in there. And so, Chris, you wrote that definition, right?
No,
You didn't write that? That wasn't your proposal?
it was my proposal to add it to the 2 zones, but that definition's been around. I think it's in your blue book right there that you got in front of you.
So a long time, so I take that back. But anyway, we have these 2 real world experiences of how it's been used since it was allowed in those 2 zones. No speculation, no guesswork. We have dozens of neighbors upset, lots of people, like really upset about it. And it doesn't seem to be working. So the prudent thing seems to be to pull it back out of that zone as a permitted use or conditional use and look and see if we can't do a better definition.
Both of those contractors and Bristol contractors for a number of years. I don't know where actors have created that.
He out of Moncton and he's now moved to Middlebury.
It was Moncton before. So I don't know. I guess again, based on the conversation, would you be willing to? Are
Work on a
you
definition?
seeing anything in that definition that you would?
I could take a shot and find a middle ground, I think, and change the definition. I don't know whether that would satisfy anybody, but I could certainly do it if that's the way you all are leaning.
Business yard.
So, and I assume we're not the only ones that have this definition, or are they?
I'm looking under commercial.
I'm sure there are other similar definitions somewhere.
Contractor yard is what most towns seem to call it, and it is more kind of into
Allowed that kind of stuff.
just out of contractor and or landscaping. The scope and scale seems intent. It's very similar to what the intent here is, that when you read it, it should be small, but it was just broad enough that it allowed larger than it should have. And that's exactly it. I mean, when we talked about it, when I proposed it, one of the examples we were using was Greg Butler at the time with his landscaping company, sitting on the corner of Mountain Street. And it didn't fit there. So he wanted to move it, but there was no place at the time. We didn't have subdivision regs, that's why Smith McLean went through Act 250 for theirs. Because the only place you could have it was in the commercial zone, which had 1 acre minimums, which triggered Act 250. So there was no way, so they were stuck. So the compromise we made at that time, this was before we had subdivision regs, let's open up a couple spots where this could work. And that's how it came about. And which has allowed Greg Butler to move out of the village area and not be creating a horrible congestion issue on that corner of Mount Street Hill. So that's the backstory, and that's how this all transpired, if anyone wanted the history.
So I would say one of the concerns that I am thinking about, which I think actually addresses what neighbors and people have been upset about, sort of kind of like I feel about, well, there are two. How much back and forth traffic are you having throughout the day, right? Regardless of the size of the vehicles or the purpose of your business, right? But are you going back and forth? This whole idea of what is majority of the business is conducted off premise or off site. I think that needs to be more carefully defined. And I also think that one of the factors is the size and weight of the vehicles that you're pulling in and out of there. If you're driving by and you're Greg Butler and you got your heavy duty pickup and you got your trailer on it for your mowers and your trimmers, and you're going by my house, you don't make my house shake. But when they delivered the gravel to do the stuff under my porch and they brought in a heavy duty truck, you bet my house shook. Do I care if a landscaping truck goes down the street? And I'm just being personal because I think this is what people are concerned about in a residential area, right? They go back and forth up and down the street all day. It doesn't really bother me. That's just traffic. Heavy duty, you're pulling an excavator, you're moving an excavator off of a trailer, it's shaking, it's clanging, there are chains, there's dust, there's dirt. Or you have a heavy duty, like truck that hauls gravel and dirt, and it needs to do that for your business. The impact of that in a residential area feels physically and visually, but I think particularly physically, very different. It's the size of the construction. Construction can mean Smith and McLean. Construction can also mean, given what we've been sort of, getting proposals for, right? An excavating business. Those are different kinds of vehicles. Both good businesses to have in town. Just, is it the right thing to have next to a home?
So on a Smith McLean, the reason why they needed it was to move their heavy equipment that they own down to that site.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. So just as I was browsing through, I found a quick definition, and I think sort of hems into what you're talking about. This one says, including but not limited to, I think we can eliminate that, but construction, mechanical, electrical, structural, plumbing, or landscaping contractors. That's sort of what we envision. It's like the plumber who has his 2 trailers and his 5 guys working for him, they need a place to park. The landscapers, we aren't talking excavators.
Except it's been used for excavators the 2 times since it's been in there. The lived experience is it's inviting in the excavators and the heavy 50,000 pound truck and the stockpiles.
And I think the key word there is construction, right? I think what you're bringing up, Chris, is very helpful in giving specific examples. Those are great because I think that is what we intend. The word construction, right, needs to be much more carefully defined. Or we're going to have exclusions, right?
That's the other option.
Non-permitted uses are, excavating, gravel, garbage, whatever it is, tonnage of trucks or something. But I think that then it's clear.
So I guess I would ask, because they're vital businesses to have in the village, and they're pre-existing or at least one of them's existing in the villages. How do we handle those contractors that have larger equipment? If we don't want them in a construction yard or a business yard.
What do you mean?
Masterson is the one that's getting tossed around here. You tell Masterson can't doing business in Bristol, or he can't have his yard in Bristol anymore?
Can we do that?
He's been operating there forever.
Pre-existing,
Yeah.
you could make him he may already be a non-conforming use,
I
depending on
understand
where he is.
he's trying to do something up on the mountain.
That's exactly.
Trying
Yeah.
to move his business up there, right?
And that's
Well,
why,
I don't know what the deal is.
well,
I don't want to know what the deal is.
Well, I would say another consideration here, and I mean, not to open up the can of worms, is also to be looking at the actual map and these districts and saying, well, if you are operating, and you do have heavier equipment, right? Then which town road are you taking out? What are you driving by? Are you driving by farm fields, right? And then heading out, to one of our bigger roads? Or are you cutting down Pine Street past a bunch of houses, or are you cutting across Hewitt, or are you driving through a residential area on a dirt road? I think it's what's the impact of the business, right? Is that's the whole idea of having it reviewed, right?
well, in the DRB, when those questions are asked, the typical answer is I can only control the people who work for me, and most of the people who come to my yard are contractors, and I don't have any say so over their routes.
Yeah. And that's fair, but
That's fair, but it plays out badly for the neighbors.
So. Is there enough interest that we develop definitions?
I think
Some
Adam
sideways,
volunteered to-
up, down? Well, I'd asked Adam, but I think where's your thumb?
Did he accept?
Yeah, I said I would do it. I mean, just doing a straw poll of where people were. I think that's your solution, because you've got, I counted 2 no's and basically 4 yays and 1 changed the definitions.
Yays or no?
Leave it in. Yays would be leave it in, 2 no's would be take it out. And 1.
It is the goal of planning and zoning, as it says in the regs, create clear and fair, and they use other words too, rules, a nice clear path for applicants and an understandable path for applicants and citizens. That is preamble to both the town plan and the zoning regulations. So far in operation, since this change was made, nothing's been clear with those applicants. They shove all kinds of things into their proposal because the definition is broad and lets them do that. And then it comes to the DRB, and it's very convoluted about what's in, what's out, what's cool, what's not cool. It creates tremendous confusion and aggravation on the part of the neighbors who want to have a say in that. And so I'd say that as it stands, it's not working. It creates more confusion, and probably in these 2 instances, litigation. And if it's causing litigation, then by definition, it's not clear and it's not unambiguous, and it's not getting people to conclusions. So I'm worried that we get more proposals in the door while these are on the book, while the current language is on the books, that become more confusing and litigious and that sort of thing. It's not working now. We don't have to project into the future and guess how it might work. Now it's creating this confusion. So I'd like, as an interim thing, pull it out as a conditional use from those 2 zones. Let's work on it and get it back in there as soon as we can. Or whatever the other solution might be.
Okay, so but I think Adam is pretty accurate that there is interest in keeping it in there, looking at the definition, revising it. So I think that's where we should go.
I'd like to make a motion.
But isn't the point here really that we're trying to keep it out of residential zones, like closer, the village residential zones that we're hoping more people will come into because we need housing. And the town of Bristol is quite larger, and I would think have many locations that might be suitable for something more like this.
One would think.
One would think.
yeah. Could I ask a question about timeline? Because I think it's important. So if we leave it in, like what
You're
are
not
we
gonna
up
make
against?
any changes until you go through a hearing process anyway. So if we're,
Yeah,
if
so-
we're already revising definitions and going through this, if you can't get to an answer, then maybe John's argument is persuasive, but you're not gonna speed anything up because you're not gonna do this on an ad hoc basis. The select board could, but the planning commission can't. So you've got to make a change, you've got to go through the hearing process and then the adoption process. So I don't necessarily think you're losing anything by me trying to work on definitions that go with the rest of the changes that you're making.
Would it be in any way significant if, let's just say for the moment, that the planning commission had indicated its desire to pull this,
So John,
if I could.
don't know. You're just going back to the same thing, so you're repeating your point.
I'm asking the question of our consultant. Would it make a difference in any sense if we, let's just say we went ahead and we pulled that out tonight, we took a vote, and I know it wouldn't take effect until it goes through the process. However, if somebody then came in and made another application that was along the lines of the ones that have been made, would it matter in any way to the DRB or the litigation that might follow if planning commission had indicated its direction?
Technically, no. Legally, no. Basically, the regs that would stay in place would be your current regs, which currently allow it. It's a conditional use review, so the DRB might think twice, but it's hard for me to say that. Legally, no.
I think there's a greater risk, John. If one wants to look at your goal of shielding it, because it already is there. And there's a much greater chance nothing will change and it'll go through exactly like it is now. Having the opportunity to have someone work with the language so that it's not the way it is now that gets presented in 4 or 6 months, but it's something which we all feel better about and can be more direct as best one can. Your objective, I think, would be more closely achieved. That's my sense of things.
And I can live with that.
So here's, I believe, the timeline and why we're talking about these two requests outside of the bylaws right now is we are going to be finalizing our review of the regs for probably a November hearing process. So I mean, we're on that track. So now's the right time. And through the month of October, as we look at the regs overall, to finalize these two definitions, if we want to make changes or whatever that change may be, and fold it right in with the bylaw stuff.
I'm at peace with that. If we can review a prospective change in the definition and then decide, maybe that is satisfying, maybe not, but
You know,
I'd be happy to wait for
we're
that.
talking about high density. No, we're not talking about high density.
RA, rural agriculture 5 and village mixed.
Yeah.
Which is
Village mixed,
Yeah,
village
VM.
mix.
VN, that's what I want. Yep.
VM, yep.
Okay.
So if we beat this to death for now, somebody in agreement that we have back to it adequately tonight?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on in our agenda. So last month, we had a light crew and I brought up the concept of the communication plan. There's varying opinions about how much the planning commission should get out, the word out, if you will, before the required public hearings. And there wasn't a lot of interest, but then again, it was a different crowd than it is tonight. So I wanted to touch base once again about what, if anything, we should be doing. My concept, I left it loose the last time, but my concept is we should at least be making people aware of the hearings coming up on like 4-page forum. Maybe a article in the Addy, they seem to be interested. Then there's probably a few other options. Maybe there's a few posters that go around town, that's that type of thing. That's pretty low key. It could be much more intensive than that. If somebody chose to kind of head that up, if you will. So once again, I just kind of put that out there. Fred,
That's good, all good. I think as much communication, the better. I was also thinking when I was reading the stuff that you had and sent, that it would be great to have a side-by-side comparison. This is what the current language is, this is what the new language is. So that someone doesn't have to be a PhD or even close to say, oh, they're gonna allow blank now, they didn't allow it before, or this language has changed. I don't think it's gonna be a 17-page document, it would be a modest document, but I think publishing something that could be available in town offices and maybe even, the library, a few other places, so people could, in advance of the meeting, see it. Not that they will, having been at, well, we only had one town meeting and I wasn't here because of COVID. But I chuckle from up on the stage and watching people come in. And 90% of the people picked up the town report when they walked in the friggin' room. They didn't spend a lot of time clearly reviewing things and going over the articles and whatever. But as much opportunity as you can give people to get their hands on this, I think would be good. And I'm sure we can get some people to agree to have some copies of that. This is what it was, this is what it's going to be.
Yeah, so Adam's done a great job so far. Oh, reg, and you gotta flip through the pages, but all the changes are in red.
Oh, yeah, so everything's in track changes, but I can create, I bet, a 2-page memo.
That would be
Yes.
super.
Yeah.
that, basically summarize everything that you've talked about thus far.
Yeah.
So I will wait to create that until you're done, until you
Yeah.
agree. But I'm happy to do that for you. Huh?
Yeah.
Who sets the hearing? The select board or do it?
Your hearing, you get to set.
Okay.
Is there any way to make the documents that we're talking about available for people online so they don't have to go to the library or town hall? Like even if it just go on the town website, download a PDF, put a link in the front porch forum. Just thinking about,
That's the
making
best
it
way.
easy. Yeah.
Yeah, you tell I'm so
Okay.
74.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, if we get real fancy, we can have a poster with a QR code, just walk up to it and like.
You got it.
I know that. I'm totally okay with that.
So unless if somebody has a burning desire to head that up, I appreciate it, otherwise. I'll make some sort of attempt. Crickets.
Well, I'll make up your memo.
Yeah, well.
I can do a front porch forum post with a link, basically to the memo and to the track changes document
Yeah.
on your website. If you want, I will do a poster with a QR code for you. And then Chris can post the stuff to your website.
It's getting easier for me all the time, that is.
And what did I say?
Adam, you're the best.
I just wrote down share. And what was I gonna share? No, summarizing changes. Share.
The red line, no, you were gonna do a memo.
You've already got the red line. I'll do a memo once we're finalized.
Yeah. Well, and then,
Um,
you can always have the big caveat of like, here's where you can see the existing, right? Zoning regs, and here's the new one, what it would look like. So if people really want to go into the weeds and read the details, those are easily accessible too, right? Like, here's the summary. If you want to go back and look at the old one, it's here. This is what the new one would look like. This is what you're voting on. Like, this is what the hearing's about.
So he's got one that's red line that crosses out the existing and replaces it, so sometimes that gets confusing, but it really draws some attention to where the changes are.
I mean, the headline is density is coming to Bristol, right? I mean, that's most of what the substance of most of what we've done. To me, that is a good way to summarize it. That explains it.
And I think we should, to your
Words.
point, will we be the first town in Addison County to revise our zoning regs towards the goals of the state?
Lincoln and Shoreham are also doing it. So we'll see. We'll see whether
We'll
you're
be
first
amongst
or
the
not.
first
You'll be
three.
amongst the first
Well,
three.
We can say
I think
Addison
it'd be
County
wonderful.
wins.
I think
You
it'd be wonderful if Adam, if you can arrange it or someone to get someone to do an article.
Okay. I can
Because
talk to
it's,
Front Porch
it's
Forum
this,
about
you
it.
know, affordable housing and all that's important stuff.
So
And they can interview Chris, they can interview you, they can interview the chair.
So Maren Howe, who is the Addison County reporter for this area, she's done one or two articles already.
Yeah.
So we could, sure we could get her to do them when it's towards the end. Now, I'm sorry, I don't know if I gave you enough room or not, but you had the maps that you wanted to compare.
Yeah, well, you all have them now.
Okay.
Do you want to keep going or do you want to quit for the night?
I'm ready to say we're done, but. So the maps we've got,
So you have the maps and you can see basically there were three main areas of changes. I can do it, or are you sharing, Chris, or not?
Give me 2 seconds and I will be.
So you can see on the maps, there are basically three areas of changes that you made. You changed the village residential district around Plank Road into the HDR district, allowing for a lot more density in that area. You changed the village residential down on Hewitt or Lower Notch Road, where the number 3 is, to high density development, allowing a lot more development there. And then in and around your village business district, which is in, I'll call it red, brick red. We made some changes. One, we changed the village business district so that it would encompass the entire sewer area and some other parcels. But that way, basically, we could respond to all the necessary changes in S100 totally by changing just the village business district. It resulted in some changes to the ROC district. It got smaller. And it resulted in some changes to the HDR district. So there were some areas right around the east side of the village business district that were probably more appropriate to be residential than village business. So we changed them there. We didn't want them, they were ROC. We didn't want them basically a little island unto themselves. So we changed those and incorporated them into the high density residential district. So those are largely your map changes, and then we'll go through the zoning changes next time.
Yeah, and will there be room to make some proposals? Because I do have two proposals I'd like to make in light of the densification that we're allowing.
so the whole intent, the next two meetings will be to review the markup as we have it right now and make sure that we are happy with what's in there, and if there's stuff that needs to be changed, so yes.
So yes, there will be room for substantive discussion about additional changes. Well, very substantive. I mean, I could make a motion right now that would lead to a substantive conversation about ADUs. And I get a sense that we want to be done for the night, but I don't want to miss the opportunity to make these proposals, because if we're densifying, we should think about the other end of that, which is protecting, giving people a way to, you know, to like have a say in densification as people build ADUs, for example. So I would make a motion right now.
No, you can't.
Well, I'm not sure you have the ability to declare that I can't make a motion as chair.
We cannot make actions tonight because they weren't warned.
Well, fine, it doesn't have to be an action thing, it can be a discussion. You know, but I want to read the room. But I don't want to be locked out of an opportunity to talk about ADUs and how we can protect against what has happened in town with ADUs already. And if the headline is density is coming to Bristol, then the next question is, in my mind, as you know, the neighbor of potential density, is what protections are there for me in that if my neighbor wants to densify? And we haven't really discussed that. And I've been quite acquiescent. We've discussed it in a general sense without an eye towards actual policy, but I don't want this process to end before we discuss the potential impacts of the density that we are inviting and that we're trying to sell to people in Bristol, and I'm with it. I voted for these things. I even proposed some of the densification. I'm all for it. But not if I don't want to create a car with an accelerator and no brake, which is what, if we allow lots of density in the village, but don't have any recourse for people who are on the receiving end of that density, then we're essentially unleashing a car without brakes on the developmental road. So I do have a couple of substantive proposals that I'd like to put forward for discussion, and I'll refrain from doing so now through a motion if you assure me that we have time in the future to discuss those.
2 meetings in October that are the whole intent of those 2 meetings is to review the regs as they set right now and get it to the point where we're ready to put them out. So.
Great.
Yes, but we've got 2 meetings. We need to have concise conversations. And, if there's an appetite for whatever the changes are an individual makes, fine, we'll talk about it. If there's not, then we just need to move on to the things that
Sure.
people are willing
I
to
mean,
talk about.
I think we have a conversation, maybe it leads to a motion or it doesn't. If it does lead to a motion, it goes up or it goes down, and it's a done conversation.
Okay.
When are our meetings?
First and third Tuesdays. I don't know the dates for them.
So it'll be the 10th,
Third and 17th.
the 3rd, and okay, I'll be here for the 3rd. I will not be around on the 17th.
So they're at the bottom of the agenda.
Let's get all the controversial stuff on the 3rd.
You will be here on the 3rd?
One thing I just go out. That's appropriate. I don't know if you have, like, because right now I would have to wait till public comment, but I'll wait. It's just, it's comments I want to make, but I'll wait till it's proper, because it's me voicing a personal, not a professional question.
I'm game to hear it.
Okay, but I will be at that point.
So.
I think you're.
Could be, or we could, you wanna do it with your report?
Nope, because I want, this is me as Chris Curley, this is the citizen, not Chris Curley zoning or any other role I
Yeah,
play.
why don't you do it after administrative matters?
That's perfect. I was
It's
asking.
not public comment, but we'll do that. So we did touch briefly on the maps. I think the next thing that we need to do is administrative matters, which you don't care about.
Great.
If you.
Unless you want to stay for them.
I will quietly leave so you can conduct your business.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
The question I really brought up, and I mean, that's, this is, anything 900 square feet, is it footprint or total square foot? Square foot the whole entire ADU.
That's one of the things, that's one of the, I had 2 things to bring up, that was one of them. Nail down the total square footage.
Floor to go up to.
There's different interpretations.
That'd be. Square feet.
Okay, so,
The uses in there like a garage.
so,
We can talk about
But
it.
then you can regulate it because it's not just an ADU. If it's 2 new uses, you get the chance to regulate that.
Well,
So-
Right. Well, if it's accessory building, is not an ADU.
Thank you, Adam.
okay, we're getting.
Hey,
off
don't jump on
topic.
white, that's supposed to be quick.
So,
Let him out of here.
so the next thing is approval of minutes. They were distributed. Has anybody got it?
I think I was absent for that meeting, so I'm not sure I can participate.
Yeah. Likewise, I wasn't there, but
So you're not
You got a slim group then, right?
I was there.
Slim.
So we don't need to actually vote on minutes, but we need to review them. And we generally vote on them, but we at least need to review them for accuracy. So if we don't have enough people that think they were there to have a forum approve them or vote on them, then we will just, we could. Well, we could table them if that's the desire, okay?
It's a little thinner or a little more general than some ways.
Yeah. Okay, I get it. Loaning report.
Not a lot. The biggest thing going on is the firehouse apartments have opened. And Mr. Blittersdorf is almost done with his building behind the fire station, so there's a ton of movement in over in that section of town.
Are they moving into those living units they got
Most of them are filled,
already?
yeah.
That was-
yeah, there's like kayaks in the parking lot, plants, like the whole
Wow.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great thing for Bristol.
Oh, so backing
I've
up,
walked that project almost daily, so it's been fun to watch.
I forgot the new business item, so the select board update, I drafted an email, I sent it out to everybody for review and comment. I don't know if anybody's got any comments to it. If not, I'll take one more look at it, maybe it makes sense, and I'll send it to the select board. Basically, it's kind of a heads up on we're nearing the end of our deliberations, and we will be conducting hearings. And also, I think I had put in there something to the effect of asking them to make a decision as to whether they were going to make the decision on the changes or put it to vote too, so.
Yes, for the,
Select board,
saying, it's like working now, because of S 100, they can just.
they can just
accept it.
approve it, yeah.
Yeah,
And
and that's
we-
what 5% of,
and then there's a
Something like that.
petition
Yeah,
process,
yeah.
yeah. But anyway, it would be good for us to know that going into our hearings with their pleasures. I'm not hearing a lot of emotion about that, so I'll just send it out. So back to administrative matters, discussion or miscellaneous correspondence. There was a couple emails that came out. One of interest is Region Planning and the Public Service Department are having they're calling it a listening event for input for the future of electricity in Vermont. I sent that also to the Energy Committee, and I think there's some interest in that group to go to it. Is there any comment or questions about that? Okay, so then we're at the point of public comment. And is there any public comment?
Good, Jimmy. Like I said, my comments are as a member of the public now, as a member, as an employee. One of the things I noticed looking at the map just the other day, when Plank Road was added to HDR, one of the rationales behind having it as village mix was as we start to build the village out, we also have to make sure that we allow for the conveniences that go with that. Things like stores, so it's walkable. If we build out Plank Road, like the folks living in the apartments on Plank Road, that's not walkable to get to downtown. But if you want a cup of coffee, that's what your option is, other than getting your car. So just keep that in mind as we're doing this, and just think as you're looking at the use table, what uses would make sense to make those not only places where we can jam houses, but make it livable neighborhoods. That's all.
It's a very good point, and it's funny to be here at this time in history when little tiny Bristol is thinking about what might be on the further edges and how we serve people who live on the further edges, because it's not gonna be little tiny Bristol that long.
And that's I think it's very important, but that's my.
It's a very good point.
Okay. No other public comment. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
John moves.
Second,
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Nay.
Anybody abstain?
I'm for it.
Any abstentions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, everyone.